Hi, welcome back to Lean Blog Interviews. I'm Mark Graven, and today we are joined by Tim Hobbs. He is one of the keynote speakers this year at the AME International Conference, AME being, of course, the Association for Manufacturing Excellence. It's going to be held in Atlanta, October 28th through the 31st. Look for a link in the show notes, or you can go to AME.org to learn more and hopefully register and join us. So again, we're joined by Tim Hobbs. He is the founder and president of Hobbs Technical Consulting. He is an author. He is author of the book, The Anatomy of Problem Solving. He is an in-demand international keynote speaker, trainer, and business consultant, and he currently works in the semiconductor industry as a director of digital transformation. Tim served 9 years in the U.S. Navy. So, Tim, thank you, of course, for that. Managing and maintaining advanced electronic, navigational, alarm, combat, telecommunication, and power systems. And after his military service, he worked for Intel Corporation for 14 years. Tim has a BS in Business Information Systems and an M.B.A. in Technology Management. He's also a Lean Six Sigma Black Belt. So, Tim, welcome to the podcast here today. How are you?
I'm doing good, Mark. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, yeah, it's great to have you here. I'm looking forward to what you're going to be able to share at the AME conference. We're going to do a little preview today, maybe get to know you a little better than you might share about on stage. Somebody will, of course, introduce you and read your bio, but in your own words, Tim, tell us a little bit about yourself and your Lean or your Lean Six Sigma journey.
Well, good, Mark. I actually was looking forward to have this conversation just because it's not scripted.
Right.
I'm really excited about speaking at the conference this year. There's a couple of good reasons. One, because my oldest son just moved to Atlanta, Georgia area. And I just found out January that we got another grandbaby on the way. It just happened to be at the right time. So the answer was yes. So,
Well, good. Good. Congratulations.
Yeah. So I'm really excited for a number of reasons to be back in Atlanta area. But a little bit about me, like I said, I kind of started my journey when I was, just like most kids growing up, trying to figure out how things work. I would take things apart, couldn't put it back together. And, but I was always curious about how things was working, what's the theory behind stuff before I even knew what theory was. So I was always curious. That curiosity led me into the U.S. Navy, where it was basically my first experience outside of a little town in South Carolina. The little town was actually called Blackbelt, if you can believe it. And so basically, I went to the Navy, went to San Diego, went through the Navy electronics training, where my eyes were just open to how things work. We went through theory, we went through system operations, and we went through one of the things that really triggered me was problem solving. It was like a 2-week course in problem solving, unlike anything I've experienced at that point. And I remember the instructor said, if you learn this philosophy of critical thinking, there'll be no problem you will not be able to solve. And that was it for me. I was like, I am all ears. Tell me. And by the time I was through with that program, I felt like there was no problem I couldn't solve. And then you go into the real Navy and you 306 degrees in the middle of nowhere. When the poop hit the fan, what are you going to do? Right? Your situation awareness, you got all these things kicking, the theories and how things work. And like, what if it don't work? And all these different things you need to figure out. And it all clicked. Everything just clicked. My training, my experience, theory of operation, how systems work, and this very critical thinking on problem solving. And from there, I have just had probably one of the most successful careers that I could imagine. And it really was just based on problem solving, as simple as it is. But at the conference, my goal is to just inspire people to use problem solving, but not only just to know how to solve problems, but how do you leverage it to position yourself for success? And so that's what I'm really excited about. I got so many stories to tell because I was in the Navy, and then from the Navy I went to the semiconductor industry. Like I said, I started working at Intel, and people were just like, "What are you doing?" And I'm just like, "I'm troubleshooting." That's what we used to call it. And just like, but you're doing something different. And what's the method? And I was like, what do you mean a method? What's the name of it? I'm like, problem solving got a name? I was just that naive.
Yeah.
And that basically started me to really think about. I started to tap into the industry of professional problem solving, and then I was getting to understand all the buzzwords, 8D, 7-step troubleshooting, model-based problem solving, all these different things about problem solving. Then that led me to eventually Lean, then Lean Six Sigma, which was an opportunity for me to just learn all things problem solving, what techniques, what methods that they use. And I've just always been a student to learn. And that's when I went and got my Lean Six Sigma certification. That's a whole nother story because I didn't want to do it, to be honest. But you said, why? I was like, I mean, have we complicated it? I mean, you mean solving problems with data is now Six Sigma? I'm like going, I was like, what is that?
Right.
Organizing your workspace to be effective is now lean. So to me, it's conceptually, I always knew what it was.
Sure.
And so that kind of, but when I went into the whole thing of getting a certification, that really opened up a lot more doors for my career. So, but that's kind of a long and short of who I am.
Would you say, as a professional problem solver, somebody who's got a passion around problem solving, how do you combine, let's say, frameworks? You mentioned a couple of them there, of course, methodologies with critical thinking. Because, like in my experience, having a framework doesn't mean solving a problem is easy. Right?
No. And it's actually kind of interesting you said that because when I started to really get into problem solving, and I've seen three different things, especially when I was training and teaching a lot. I will ask the question to my class and say, hey, how many people heard of what problem solving techniques or methods that you guys are used to and tools and stuff? And I'll hear people say, oh, yeah, 5Y. I'm like, yeah, but 5Y is really not a method. It's a tool that you use to help you, get down to the lowest level. You can actually start your investigation. And then somebody would say 8D. I say, oh, yeah, 8D is a method. It's a structured approach that starts here and ends there. Then they go, oh, yeah, fishbone. I say, yeah, fishbone is kind of a tool that's used to do this. And so for me, I started to realize that I try to put some context in problem solving, and I start to see concepts such as lean. It's more of a concept. The method behind which lean practitioners use is typically around kaizens. And then you think about Six Sigma. What is Six Sigma? It's a concept, but the method by which we implement a Six Sigma project is called DMAIC. And then the tools are fish bones and all these different things. So I started to see a connection to try to simplify what problem solving is, and try to make sure people understand that. To your point, the framework is important, but that framework is really just a guide to get you from beginning to end, whether you're doing 7-step troubleshooting, AD, model-based problem solving. It's all conceptually the same. And if you follow any one of these methods, you will get to the end. The key, which I used to talk about in AD, I said, what does a D stand for? And nobody really know it. I said, the D stands for discipline. Right. You got to follow the method or the framework and use the right techniques and tools, because problem solving is more situational, right? You don't use the whole toolkit. You just use the right tools that you need for the use case that you're trying to address. So for me, I got very, from a teacher perspective, really trying to make sure we understand what we're talking about. Frameworks are great because it guides us, but to your point, the discipline and the be able to apply the critical thinking process, deductive reasoning, all these things that goes with problem solving is important. But how do you teach that? How do you teach people? Do you teach people to follow frameworks, or you teach them the whole enchilada of problem solving and
Yeah.
situation awareness? So
Yeah. And with that education and experience, we get better at knowing which tool to
yeah,
grab out of the proverbial toolbox
yes,
within frameworks or within methods.
exactly, yeah.
Well, so I'd love to hear a little bit more. So one way you probably teach people these approaches and what you've learned. I haven't had a chance to check out your book yet, but I will. The Anatomy of Problem Solving. At the AME conference, they might not want you to promote your book, but we don't have rules against that here on the podcast. So not just in a promotional way, but tell us about the book. Like, I always love to hear the story of the book, how it came to be, how your book on problem solving is something people should check out.
Yeah. So the good thing is AME actually is going to promote books. They're actually going to do like a bookstore thing, and so they
Oh,
actually,
okay, good.
they kind of low key kind of giving us a chance to do that. But the book actually, as I transitioned from the Navy to my first job outside the Navy in the semiconductor industry, Intel. It started there, right? Because we was working shift works and 3 days on, 4 days off. It was great for me because I was going to school, trying to build my family, from being in the Navy. So when I was off, I was off. I was going to school. I was doing everything else. And then when I went in for my shift, I was like, oh man, we got all these problems. And they go, oh yeah, it's so terrible. We got to call everybody. And I was like, hold on a second. Where's the book? Where's the theory of operation? How does this system work? And so I will read the book. I will go to the cafeteria at work, and I will read the theory of operation, how the system was designed to work, just like I learned in the Navy. And I go, okay, cool. Then I will go back to the problem, what's really happening, and then I will go back, say, okay, this has not happened. Then I go back to the book, and probably here before I even know what a fishbone was. And I was like, it's probably in this area. Then I would just troubleshoot the way I've always learned, and I was constantly solving major problems where we had to shut down the vendor that was coming from Japan or something to work on the system. I'm like, you got a vendor? What are you talking about? Just give me the book. And so what was happening was people, to be honest, and I talk about this in the book, it was people was like kind of accusing me of sabotage.
Yeah. Well,
It was like there
how
is
so?
no way this guy can be outside of our industry and solving these highly complicated problems with the accuracy I was. And that's when people was like, so I remember going, I got called in from my engineers. They called me in a room. They're like, hey, Tim, can you explain me how this problem works? I said, oh, because most of us, we archive problems, because we like that, right? And I was like, oh, that problem. I went to the whiteboard and I wrote it all up on the whiteboard, and this is what happened. And they did this, and I took this out, and they put in the bad part, and I took this back out, da, da, da. And then I was like, and there you go. And that's how I solved the problem. And they was like, man, that just makes sense. And I'm like, what do you mean that makes sense? I mean, y'all should be clapping. This is a great project. And they closed the door and they said, hey, man, your team is accusing you of sabotage. They said, but we see what you're doing. They literally was accusing me of, before I got off shift, I broke something, went away for 3 or 4 days, came back and undid it. That's
And you only knew how to fix it because you had broken it. Was
That's
the
right. Which is a
accusation?
whole nother story, right? Because I'm like, you should have undid what I did, right?
Yeah.
And so that's when it really hit me that, wow, this is really interesting. So what happened was they were starting to ask me, well, what method are you using? I'm like, well,
Right.
I don't really, like I said, it was an AD. I'm like, no, I don't even know what this stuff is. And so I began to interview myself to really figure out what am I really doing and how do I write it down. So I started to write it down. I created a PowerPoint training, and then it eventually led to a book because I tell the stories of the method that I kind of grew up doing. I kind of learned it from the military. I got in corporate America and I had to tweak different things. Like one part of the book was so the book has three different phases. Is one, why problem solving is important. Okay. And I go through the statistics, the labor bureau, all the stuff. Cause I was in grad school and I was writing. So I'm just doing all the research and I'm like, wow, this is really happening. And then the second part of the book is basically says, but here's a method, and your words, a framework by which if you use this framework, you'll be able to solve some problems. And these are all the tools. I didn't even go that much in tools and techniques, to be honest. It was really just this thinking process. Because I didn't know the tools were yet. I didn't know the names. And then the third part of the book, which I learned in corporate America, was what to do when your team becomes a problem. I didn't have to worry about that in the Navy because we was all on the same boat. Do your job, get it done, right? But when I got in corporate America, it was kind of like, hey, this guy's resisting me. You know, these same people accuse me of sabotaging. I'm like, they're kind of resisting me. I'm like, wow, man, this guy's a real player hater. How do I get this guy to work with me? I'm like, why is this guy spinning so much? I mean, you know, you say, hey, he's over here. So I had to learn creatively how to work with these individuals because they really did know the industry more than I did. Right. But I can apply that critical thinking to their theories that they knew, and I can connect the dots real quick. So for me, the book, the book started like that, and that one section of the book, which is what to do when a team becomes a problem, became probably one of the best sections of the book that people would love to read. But it was always about dealing with the people factor of problem solving that we typically overlook, but it's a reality, right? When you're dealing with teams and you're dealing with these personalities, and those personalities can be very toxic to an overall effort, especially when you're solving problems in cutting edge technology, right? How do you solve a problem that you've never seen before? You have to follow a structured approach.
Well, and it sounds like you were faced with some situations that called for, if you will, organizational problem solving or corporate politics, political problem solving. Because, I mean, when you talk about player haters, you know, you think of don't hate the play, hate the game.
That's right.
if I may say that, right? I mean, part of the game, if you will, I mean, there's silos and there's measures, and as you've probably, I'm sure, seen in different big companies, if everyone's not on the same boat with the same mission, that's a common organizational challenge.
Right. And but what I learned when I was doing my research in this issue, it really brought the people component to problem solving and realized that we all get offended for different reasons, and sometimes our offense manifests in different ways. Some people get angry, they get very protective. Some people get very, I don't know. And you're like, come on, man. So some things we do know. Why you keep saying you don't know? We do know that. Like for me, my one character that I wrote about myself is I'm a quiet storm. When I get offended, I'm going to get really quiet on you. It's not because I have nothing to say. It's just because I'm trying to control what I'm feeling right now. And if I'm a facilitator and I'm leading a team through this effort, and I have a chance to see a player, a quiet storm. This guy was really smart. I knew this guy was smart. Everybody said this guy really smart, but he was too quiet in the meeting. He had no opinion. I said, hey, what do you think about this? I was kind of like setting him up to say anything, but he would not say anything. Then I realized the player hater who just shut this guy down. And I noticed that. So just like I recommend in the book, sometimes you have to deal with people in public. Sometimes you have to deal with people in private. Right. For the player hater, you have to deal with them in private because they're waiting to explode on you. So you cannot address them in a meeting. Don't do it. Yep. But for the quiet storm, I also had to deal with him in private. I wanted to figure out, dude, you really understand this stuff. Why do you have nothing to say? And then they'll tell you why. And it's typically something that happened, some personality in the room who's shutting them down. Nobody's listening to them, blah, blah, blah. But they actually hold the key to the answer. So yeah, that people part of problem solving really got me to think. And then I got very strategic on how to manage those personalities, because it was critical, because the technical problem is already tough. The business problem is already complicated, but dealing with those people problems, I think that is really the edge that really gave me the opportunity to work through very difficult situations, work through people to get them on board or to get them off the team, whichever came first.
Yeah. So I'm going to order 2 copies of the book because I'm going to do a book giveaway contest.
Oh,
So invite the listeners to look for a link in the show notes. I'll keep the contest open, I think, for 2 weeks after the launch of the episode. So if you're hearing the episode shortly after its release, go take a look, or otherwise go check out Tim's book. Again, that's The Anatomy of Problem Solving by Tim Hobbs, who's joining us here today. You also have been building an online program. You want another way of helping people learn? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, and it's really the continuation of the book, right? And because I wrote the book and published it like 2007. Right when I had enough experience, understood what was going on, then I wrote the book because I was like, I need to document this. Everything was documented, but I just wrote it. But what happened was, right when COVID happened, because I was doing just like most people consulting, we was traveling around doing all kind of stuff, and then boom, COVID happened, right? And I finally had the time. Just like, what you're going to do, right? People are like, oh man, you can't really travel that much, and I also still work in the semiconductor industry, and I was like, oh man, this is perfect. I just transitioned from my traditional Lean Six Sigma job where you just jet setting around the world solving crazy problems, which was great. I loved it for about 8 years. And then I took a new role. And then as soon as I took this role in 2020, boom, hit some COVID. And it's like, oh, no, you can't travel. I'm like, man, everybody was kind of bummed out except for me. I said, I finally got time to develop this online course based on all the years of training. And like we were talking about before, let's talk about concept versus method versus tools, situation awareness, situational problem solving. And then I got a chance to be creative again. That's my second book that I got to write. But I said, you know what? Let me just go ahead and do this. So I created the online program, built the video studio in my home, in my basement. This is great. My wife's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm finally going to build this course that I've been wanting to do. And I did it my way. I took my time, where I got a chance to really take the book to the whole next level. Where now I'm training people on the video so they can learn at their own pace. And I did the same type of strategy, right? This is why problem solving is important. These are all the areas and different things about problem solving. And then I got into the methodology of teaching, of problem solving, but now it's animated. I'm live. I can speak. I can do demonstrations to show you how things work and theory of operation. Now it's not just a concept, but now you see what I'm doing. And then I got back into my what happens when your team becomes a problem. And so all of these different things, but I had a chance to research, really bring some things to surface to really go into why people go into this different type of thinking. Some areas that I probably would not have done had I not had time to really think about. I mean, I wrote one section called cognitive dissonance and problem solving. Who does that? And I'm just like, where's this coming from? So I researched it. I'm like, man, this is really good. But one of the last things I did in the course, online course, because it's kind of what I'm doing at the conference is, but how do you position problem solving for upward mobility? And there was a concept that I learned, and I've been talking about it for years, but I never wrote it. And my colleagues were like, Tim, you got to tell the story about PIE, P-I-E. And the acronym stands for performance, the I stands for image, and the E stands for exposure. And it really came from a book that one of my mentors gave me, and it was called Empowering Yourself. I think the guy's name is Harvey Coleman, and he was a black manager executive back in the day, and he was trying to figure out, why can I be successful and I have all this stuff going for myself, but I keep seeing other people who are doing less get promoted. And that was really the premise that we all come to. And so my mentor told me, I was telling him a story, and I said, yeah, man, I just started working for Intel, and I had a manager pull me aside, and he was like, hey, Tim, you should come to our meetings, and, you should kind of like look like us and dress like us. And I was like, but I'm me. What are you saying? And I remember this conversation. I told my mentor about it. It was kind of awkward. And he said, oh, he was trying to tell you about pie. I said, pie? What are you talking about? He explained it to me, but he said, go read the book and then come back and talk about it. So ideally, the whole pie thing is about, we all hear it. It's not what you know, it's who you know, right? But if you look at the percentage, and this guy literally did his research, it's really deep. The book goes way beyond what I'm talking about. But he talked about to get promoted, there's three things you need to know: your performance, image, and exposure. And it blows you away. He said 10% of your promotion comes from your performance. That just blows you away if you was just traditional thinking. 30% comes from your image, how you looking the part. And then here's the mind-blowing part. 60% of your promotion comes from your exposure. And it's not what you know, it's who you know. And it really messed with me. Literally, when I was young and think like, God, this makes no sense. But then I thought about it. I'm like, this is what I see. Okay, I see people who are in positions that they did not work to get there, and they can't perform. And what literally happens is you're going to promote yourself to your highest level of incompetency. You'll get into a position where you cannot perform, and that's bad. Okay, so I coined this new phase called the new pie. Okay, and I said, okay, it's right, but new pie should be this way, right? You should be 6% of your promotion should come from your performance. You got to be a doer. Okay. 30% should come from your image. You still have to look the part to the next level. And 10% should come from exposure. But that exposure is not like, hey, look at me. That exposure because you're doing the job and you're looking the part and people start to see you at these right areas.
Yeah. Is that exposure the result of performance? And it's funny you flipped that, because I was thinking my engineer brain, especially earlier in my career, I would say, well, it should be at least 60% based on performance. That's the logical, that's engineer brain.
Yeah.
And there are other factors. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but the key is, it's really about, now that you know this truth, what do you do with that? Right? How do you really position yourself strategically now? Because when you get the book, The Empowering Yourself, I read the comments and it said, the first time you read the book, you're going to be mad because you're like, no. And then it said, the second time you read the book, you're going to strategize. And that's literally what I did. Right. And so the key to that is that if you, like in the books and program, and what all of us do as consultants, is we really position you to solve problems and to solve it in a team environment, right? And then that's going to be good. That's going to be rewarding of itself. But that don't necessarily get you where you need to go, okay? And but if you want to be strategic about that, then there's a new game you have to play. Are you in and I recommend this is like a bonus part of the book, right? In the program. I recommend that the first thing you do, you assess your organization. And you want to ask the question, am I in a good old boy program, which I call the old pie? Or am I in a meritocracy program where if you do the work, the system takes care of you? I've had the privilege of being both. When I was in the military, do the work, you get promoted. Why? You only want to promote the best people. That's just the way it is. Same thing when I got to Intel, very meritocracy. It was, you get the work done. I didn't have to do anything. I did the work, boom, I get promoted. I do the work, I get promoted. I get the work, I get promoted. I'm like, I didn't even know who was pulling the strings. All I was doing was solving problems, and the system was promoting me. But you can get in, whether it's at a company level or organizational levels, and I've experienced both, where you're like, hey, I'm doing the work, but you just promoted this guy for creating a PowerPoint presentation. I'm like, that is unacceptable. And so what you need to understand is that, there's a manager, which is a person who's just doing their managerial job, right? That's the HR person who's just making sure you get your leave, your reviews and stuff like that. And then you have mentors, right? Mentors, that strategic person that's going to look at the bigger picture and say, hey, Mark, where are you going to be in the next 5, 10 years? That's kind of a
Yeah.
mentor. Then you have a coach, right? And the coach is basically kind of more tactical. Okay, Mark, what you got? Okay, what's going on? Okay, cool. Okay, I think we need this right here, da, da, da. So now you got your coach, but there's one piece that's missing. It's a sponsor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The
Mm-hmm.
sponsor is the person who sits in the organization who has the power or influence to get you exposed. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're in a meritocracy system, the sponsor is really not that critical, right? Even though you just need to make sure people know what you're doing. But if you're in a good old boy program, it becomes very critical. You
Right.
have to, and people say, "How do you find a sponsor?" I'm like, well, I'm going to be honest with you. The sponsor finds you
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because here's a connection. Because if you can solve a problem that the sponsor needs, they will find you, and
Yeah.
it happens in a very unique way when they ask you.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're making me. You're just jogging my memory of my first job out of college at General Motors. I had a sponsor find me.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
there was some interaction at work, and he took an interest in some of my development and in career,
yeah,
and I left General Motors after 2 years. He was an advocate for me going back to school and was very supportive of that. Had I stayed or gone back to GM, yeah, I mean, I could see where you almost wonder, like, well, why did you take this interest in me? But that's something that was helpful, and I appreciate. And maybe older me was like, well, okay, sure, he saw some talent. Younger me, I guess, was still just feeling like, okay, why? But that was a big help. So yeah, it's hard to say how do you repeat that process there, right?
mm. Yeah. Having a sponsor, especially in a good old boy system, it's a must. You have to have a sponsor, or you don't move. Right? You do a lot of work, you get a lot of stuff done. But in a meritocracy system, you don't even know. The system rewards you, and so for you, right? For me, um, I've been working and just having fun, but I didn't have a sponsor, and I would just get overlook, and then as soon as the sponsor finds me, and by you get this, you get the email or you get the hey Mark, are you happy where you're at? And you're like, well, where did that come from? Hey,
Yeah,
can you come in this conference room with me? And you have this conversation, and you got to know this conversation. So when it happens, you realize, is this person trying to sponsor me? This is a great idea. But you, as a problem solver, though, you have to deliver. Okay, you have to deliver. And I asked a question to my sponsor sometime. I said, I would say stuff like, "So, what problem keeps you up at night?"
mm-hmm.
And they'll tell you it's either cost or this project or something. And I'm really concerned about that. And I will. And here's the deal. That's why I coach people. Go solve that problem, even if you got to do it on your back end time, or you work a little later to work on this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Solve the problem and see if the sponsor qualifies to be a sponsor.
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, how do you know? You find out, right? Because if the sponsor appreciated what you just did, knowing that you kind of went above and beyond, they will make it a point to like you said, they will show a vested interest in
Mm-hmm.
your career and
Mm-hmm.
start opening doors for you had that you don't even know that was
Yeah.
even close to you. So when I look at the online program, that's the extra benefit that people get is it's like I can't, just like you can, we can't coach and mentor everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But can I document something in my busy world with kids and grandkids and all this type of stuff? Can I put something available so that people can have access to learn some of the skill sets and techniques that people like you and myself have been around for a long time. We've seen just about every scenario you can have, and nothing really throws us off, right? We're like, yep, seen this before. Oh yeah, I've seen this before. Oh
Right.
boy, yep. Oh, we need an update right away. Oh yeah, I've seen that before. But guess what? We're not ready. So therefore, we need to slow it down, because you and I both know at the end of the day, we have to deliver results.
Mhm.
And if I go through a workshop or something and everything is not where I need it to be, and I don't see enough opportunities that we can actually do anything with, we're going to stay in this Kaizen workshop type of mindset thinking, so we can actually develop some key opportunities that we can actually do something with. And
Yeah.
you can tell a lot in those workshops.
Mhm. And then you get to that point in your career where you're teaching, mentoring, and sponsoring people now, kind of paying it back in a way, or looking for
Yeah,
that next generation of other professional problem solvers, or at least budding, aspiring professional problem solvers.
yeah, and that's
Not
kind of,
everyone,
yeah,
right?
that's
I
kind
mean,
of my goal.
everyone can solve problems, but not everyone's going to have that passion for it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I always say that my passion is really to inspire the current and the next generation of professional problem solvers. Right? Yeah, we're gonna have a lot of technology, AI, and all that stuff coming, but it's not gonna replace the human side of problem solving, right? Where you can get in, you can see stuff. So to me, as I'm looking like just like you are, like, okay, what is the next 10 years gonna look like? Well, that's gonna be retirement. Okay, I'm going to be done with juggling the ball between corporate America, consulting, teaching. All these are passionate things for me. But as I'm, kind of in the mentoring side of our career, it's just good to just see that sparkle in people's eyes and just help them. I either teach a class and it'll sparkle. One or two people after every course or something, they'll come up and say, "Hey, can I talk to you, or can I have a cup of coffee?" And then you can start to see that they want to go deeper. Then they realize that, wow, this is really a career, and you do this for a living. I'm like, it's the best job ever. I mean, I get a chance to to have a company to bring you in to go solve a problem. You can get on a plane, fly halfway around the world, and you just like, okay, no problem, no big deal. Just give me your data. Let's look at it, and we go through the same framework, the same type of process, and to have that type of confidence. And sometimes people think like you know the answer. No, I trust the process. The process and the framework and the critical thinking process
Mhm.
is going to always get me there. Even when I want to jump to a premature conclusion, I have to tell myself, Tim, wait for it.
Yeah.
Don't do that, because why? You miss all the opportunity. You
Mhm.
miss all of I have a concept called a problem and the problem, right? The problem is why you're here. But when you're going through a real problem solving effort, you start to see a problems. That's
Mhm.
not the problem, but it's like, hey, why is this like that? Why did
Mhm.
that take so long? Why did that order a part and the part was wrong?
Mhm.
That's a problem. I'll come back to that later. And I just go on, then I run into another thing. And eventually what happens is that you finish your solve the problem and you discover like 10 different opportunities of little a things that haven't become the problem yet, but now
Right.
you have this list of opportunities to investigate. So if it ever happens when things get kind of low and you don't have any major stuff, I just go, hold on a second, let me go look at this particular issue again, because
Right.
this is a problem. And
Mhm.
so as you put this together and I started to teach people this stuff, they was always like, how do you always find problems?
Mhm.
Because I'm looking for them. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I am so less interested in just the problem. I'm going to solve that problem, but I'm
Yeah.
going to find everything that's contributing to this issue that we are not even considering, that may not have nothing to do with the cycle time reduction or whatever we're trying to do. It's just something that we've seen that just is not right. I always tell people, like, how do you sleep at night? If you know that there's an issue, and it's just so funny. I mean, I have my car in the shop right now. That's so funny. I took it in because it was a problem. It was
Yeah.
starting a little sluggish, and I take the car and they go, we can't find any alarm. I'm like, I know. I'm at the symptom level now. I'm like, I'm a proactive type of guy. I'm telling you, we're leading to an issue. The poop haven't hit the fan yet. I'm not beside the road. However, I don't want to be there. So let's proactively versus reactively begin to address the issues.
Right.
But yeah, it's just, I think that problem solving is the universal skill that everybody must know. Whether we talking about technical problem, we talking about business problems, and those of us who've been married for a long time, marriage problems. My wife be like, "You doing it again?" I'm like, "I know. I'm sorry." So can you explain to me, when did it start?
You got to be careful trying to solve someone else's problem when all they're wanting to do is tell you about the problem, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and you just become a good listener at that point.
Yeah.
Until they really want you. You want me to solve this problem? Like now, with my adult children, I get a chance to go. So you want me to give you the answer? Or you just want me to listen? I don't know. Let me know what you want because
Yep.
we already got the answer. Like, dump the dude. Right? Keep it moving. Right? But anyway.
That's the critical thinking and situational awareness. Well, Tim, thank you for joining us today. A preview of upcoming keynote talk. Come here, Tim, at the AME International Conference, Association for Manufacturing Excellence. Tim is going to be one of the keynote speakers there. This is the 40th anniversary
40th.
of the AME International Conference. It's October 28th to October 31st. We'll put a link in the show notes there. Again, as a reminder, Tim's book is The Anatomy of Problem Solving. I'll put a link to that. I'll put a link to his website, his company, Hobbs Technical Consulting, and and take a look for the link to the contest. If that contest, the book giveaway contest, is still open, go and enter. So, Tim, thank you. We intentionally were going to keep this relatively short to make sure it stayed a preview, but I want to take you up on, I think we had agreed that after the conference, it'd be great to have you back on the podcast, maybe, debrief, share some reflections and other thoughts, maybe things that wouldn't fit into the keynote. Does that sound all right?
That sounds great. I'm going to one up you, right? We're going to also give one online course. So you have the book, and you can do another for the online course.
Okay.
Whatever your process is, if whoever wins your contest, let me know, and then I will give them access to the online course so they can actually go through the online course, and they can really get an in-depth behind the scenes tour of what it really takes to be a professional problem solver.
All right. Well, that's great. Thank you for doing that. We'll combine that. So it'll be the book.
Oh, wow.
And the book and the online course, a grand prize, right? Okay. So we'll make that part of the same contest.
It's your choice.
Okay. I think we'll do it like that. So that's an even better prize than the book. So Tim, thank you. It's really great to meet you through this process. I look forward to being there. Sitting in the audience at the AME conference late October. Looking forward to it.
Very good. Thank you, Mark. Look forward to seeing you there.